It seems weird to say that a player who has amassed 5 Pro Bowls, 2 All-Pros, a Super Bowl ring, and is 4th all-time in pick sixes is somehow one of the most underappreciated defenders of the last decade, but I think we're at that point with Aqib Talib. I asked the question to all of you earlier this week if you would consider him a Hall of Famer if he got his 2nd Super Bowl win this Sunday, and while most of you obviously said yes, to be honest, I might put him in the Hall regardless of whether he gets that 2nd ring or not. To me, there's something to be said not just for racking up accolades and statistics, but for doing so in a way that was memorable and leaving a lasting impact on the game that future generations of players can learn from. When it comes to cornerbacks in particular, the position group as a whole is known mostly for specialization. You've got slot corners, press corners, zone corners, left corners, right corners, and even your modern day hybrid safeties / corners, just to name a few. But Aqib Talib has always been incredibly unique in that he can play in any style, in any spot, in any system, and still be one of the best players on the field. Throughout his career, whether he was in Tampa, New England, Denver, or now LA, if you needed him to press, he could press. If you needed him to play off, he could play off. If you were a zone system that thrived on aggressively playing the ball in the air, he could get you turnovers. If you were a man system that prioritized just locking people down and not even allowing windows to open in the first place, he could do that too. Whatever his coaches could dream up in the game plan for that week, Talib could do it at an elite level, which is an exceedingly rare quality for a cornerback in the modern NFL. And that rare quality, in my opinion, might have just saved the Rams defense from certain doom in the back half of this season. As I said before, a player's impact on the game and his own team weighs heavily on how I consider them as a Hall of Fame candidate, and I think it's safe to say that Talib's impact on the Rams secondary this year was certifiably massive. In fact, in games in which Talib was out with an injury, the Rams defense averaged giving up a staggering 30 points per game, compared to giving up only 18 points per game in weeks in which Talib played. That's a strikingly huge difference, obviously, but to make it even more impressive, even when taking out both of the largest outlier games in either direction, which were a shutout against Arizona in Week 2 and a 51-point outing by the Chiefs in Week 11, the difference with and without Talib was still a gigantic 7 points per game. Aqib was absolutely an irreplaceable piece for the Rams this year, and his versatility as a cover corner is why. As I mentioned earlier this week in my last episode on Tom Brady, Wade Phillips really leans a lot on his secondary to make his system work. He doesn't just call press man or off man or zone coverages, he calls all of them and often incorporates late rolls in coverage after the snap to disguise all of his looks. Phillips needs corners that can do a bit of everything because without that versatility, his calls can get pigeonholed and held back by what his secondary can and cannot do. And as a coach, when you don't have access to a big part of your playbook because you know that your players cannot execute it, that can really hamper your effectiveness and lead to, for instance, Michael Thomas blowing up your defense for 200 yards. So to demonstrate Talib's versatility and how it can really boost the ceiling of what this entire Rams defense can accomplish, I want to take you through a couple plays that I think really show what Aqib is all about and why he's still one of the best corners in the league even as a soon-to-be 33-year-old. Let's first start with his man coverage ability. This is all the way back in Week 2 against the Cardinals before he got hurt and went on injured reserve, and Talib is lined up here in a bump and run alignment against Chad Williams. And the thing about playing bump and run from a technical standpoint is that if you're not immediately pressing the receiver on the line of scrimmage, you need to have your eyes on their hips as they release. If you look at their feet, those feet can and will lie to you. If you look at their shoulders, they'll lie to you as well. But the hips will always truthfully tell you where that receiver is gonna go. So Talib is doing a great job checking Williams' hips during the initial release, and what those hips are telling him is that Williams is coming straight at him to do what's appropriately called a bump cut. A bump cut can be either inside or outside, and what you're trying to do as a receiver is to run straight into the cornerback, get your hands in his chest, throw him backwards a little bit like you're just trying to create some incidental contact, which you're not, and then as he's off balance from that contact, you snap off your route either inside or outside to create separation. Technically, it's offensive pass interference, but really it's almost never called unless the receiver blatantly shoves the DB with their arms fully extended, so it's pretty much all on Talib here to make sure that he doesn't get taken advantage of in that way. Now, once Talib reads that Williams is coming straight at him, watch how he reacts. He widens his stance, he anchors down like he's a defensive lineman taking on a block, and he shoots his hands into Williams to disrupt him before he does the same thing back. And what that does is kind of blunt the force that Williams is running into him with, which in turn means that Aqib won't be shoved all the way back and off balance, so he won't be as out of position to play this bump cut. And watch his feet here, by the way, as he transitions in the route, because that might be the most impressive thing about all of this. As soon as he feels that inside break coming through the contact, Talib gets his eyes on the quarterback to look for the ball, he drops back that inside foot to help open up his hips in that direction, and now from there, it's just a race to the spot of the catch. That's 50% of what man coverage is, really. It's just a race to a particular spot at a particular time, and at 32 years of age, Talib is somehow still winning these races. The hips are still fluid, the footwork is still perfect, his first 2 steps out of the transition are as explosive as ever. I mean, any team would be giddy to find a 22-year-old that moves like that, let alone a 32-year-old. I know it's just a little 5-yard pass breakup, but to me, this is special stuff because it shows awareness, technical polish, route recognition, and overall natural explosiveness all in one play. When scouts are combing over the college ranks to try to find the next big thing at corner, this is what they look for. Those 4 elements of man coverage are the dream package that every team wants to find, and Aqib checks every single box. All of that being said though, beyond still being phenomenal in man coverage, believe it or not, Talib might be even better in zone. This is the area where, as he's aged, I think he's truly improved the most, and maybe proven to be a more versatile overall player than some of his other elite contemporaries like Darrelle Revis and Nnamdi Asomugha. And again, a lot of that growth in zone coverage has been as a result of his accumulated experience, because contrary to popular belief, playing zone in the NFL has less to do with your ability to read quarterbacks and more to do with your ability to read routes. If you can't read route patterns and recognize what's coming before it's run, you're pretty much toast because only reading quarterbacks is not a reliable method to stop the pass. Just like I mentioned with reading feet versus reading hips, a quarterback's eyes can lie to you just as much as a receiver's feet, but if you know where the route is going because you're reading the patterns, it doesn't matter what the QB is looking at. He can't look you off and move you away from his throwing lane if you're reading something other than his eyes. So route recognition is absolutely the biggest key to success in zone coverage. And I can think of no better example for Talib's fantastic route recognition skills than his interception against Nick Foles back in Week 15. The Rams are playing cover 3 buzz here with the strong safety buzzing down to play a hook zone, while the free safety rolls over the top and both outside corners are playing a deep third zone as well. It's a pretty standard coverage, and you'll probably see it a dozen times in every single Rams game, and the Eagles actually had a pretty good play call on here against that cover 3 to exploit it. This is a sail concept, which if you followed this channel for a while now, you already know all about this, but for the new people in the room, sail is pretty much designed to kill cover 3. You've got a go route, or in some cases a skinny post being run by the outside receiver, and that route is supposed to force this outside corner to carry him deep. That's Talib on this play. Underneath that vertical route, which again is supposed to be clearing Talib out of the way, you've usually got a corner route being run by either a slot receiver or a tight end, which is the primary read, and underneath that corner route, you've got a flat route usually being run out of the backfield as a checkdown option if one of those underneath zone defenders takes away the corner route. So overall, this concept is designed to get that throw to the deep boundary open against cover 3, with the checkdown being the last resort. And as far as zone beaters outside the numbers go, it's hard to find a play with a higher success rate than this one. However, when the Rams play cover 3, those so-called safe cover 3 beaters aren't really that safe after all because they have a guy like Aqib Talib in their secondary. Watch how quickly Aqib is processing this sail concept and identifying it in real time. As he's bailing to the deep third zone, he's seeing the running back release to the flat, the tight end release to the seam, and the outside receiver threatening him vertically all at the same time. He does obviously have his eyes on Nick Foles, but he's also keeping Zach Ertz in his peripheral vision because he wants to see where he's going. Ertz is going to be the one that tips him off to what the entire pattern is, not Foles. So in the end, reading that route is the main thing that really matters to him. For instance, if Ertz keeps on going vertical up the seam, he knows that the safety will take him away in the seam anyway, so he can just stay outside and aggressively play that boundary receiver. If Ertz starts rolling inside, he knows that will probably clear the free safety out of the middle of the field, so he knows to shadow his receiver into the seam if necessary because nobody else will be there. And lastly, if Ertz breaks out on a sail concept, he knows that he's probably the only person who can read that throw in time to stop it, so he has to be especially aware of that route above all others. So again, Ertz is really the read that is going to be telling Talib what to do on this play, not the quarterback's eyes. By the time Ertz hits his landmark at 8 or 9 yards down the field, Talib sees him start to roll outside as Foles winds up for the throw, and he immediately knows where that ball is going because he's seen this play a million times throughout his career. He falls off of that vertical route and trusts his free safety to pick it up for him in the seam, while he focuses all of his attention on breaking on Ertz underneath and winning the race to that spot. He is literally the only defender that can stand in the way between Ertz and the end zone if he can beat him to the ball, and once again, that's a race that this 32-year-old man is somehow still winning. I don't know how he's doing it and how he's still so damn explosive at his age, but we really need to start appreciating what we're seeing here. When Darrelle Revis was 32, he was a shell of himself because of injuries and trying to make it one more year in Kansas City. But Talib? He's still playing arguably at a higher level now than what he did years ago when he was replaced by Revis in New England. Simply put, Talib is a physical anomaly, and were it not for some of his other, shall we say, shenanigans, I think he would be considered as a lock for a bust in Canton one day. There are only 8 defensive backs ever in the history of the league that have at least 35 interceptions, 5 Pro Bowl selections, 2 All-Pro selections, and at least 10 defensive touchdowns scored. 8 DBs ever. When you cut that list down to only players that have won at least one Super Bowl, it's 6. And if Talib wins his second ring this Sunday, the number of players on that list will be reduced to 2. Just Aqib and the man he idolized growing up, Deion Sanders himself. Will Talib waltz into the Hall of Fame on his first ballot? No, probably not, because there is a logjam at the position right now. But it's time to start having the conversation about where he fits in history. There's not a lot of players with that many seasons, that many accolades, that many touchdowns, and maybe after this Sunday, that many rings as well. More importantly though, there's not a lot of cornerbacks that have played at Talib's level for over a decade in a variety of systems, playing a variety of techniques, and who somehow still got better as a player in the twilight of their careers. Love him or hate him, Talib is a rare breed, and as he prepares to lead his defense in the Super Bowl for the second time in 4 years, it just makes me think, if someone this good is not a future Hall of Famer, then please, enlighten me. Who the hell is? Thank you so much for watching this week's episode, and if you were watching this before Super Bowl Sunday, remember that you still have one more chance to take advantage of MyBookie's fantastic offer that they've been sponsoring on this channel all season long. If you were thinking about putting down any money on the Super Bowl itself, or maybe on any of the prop bets on the side like the anthem length, or who wins MVP, or who scores first, or if they return the first kick or anything like that, just remember that all Film Room viewers can get an extra 50% deposit bonus on their initial deposit with promo code Brett at the link in the description below, and that deposit bonus will give you essentially some extra betting credits to use on the site on top of whatever your original deposit was, and that's just kind of a way for MyBookie to say thank you for trying them out. And of course, they work on more than the NFL too. If you wanted to keep betting after the Super Bowl, you can bet on anything from the NBA to the MLB, combat sports, esports, politics. I mean, you name it, they got a way for you to make money on it. So again, thank you all for supporting me and of course for supporting MyBookie, my sponsor. And I hope you guys have a truly wonderful Sunday watching the Super Bowl. Make sure to eat lots of wings just like I will. I'll be back next week to break down whatever happens either way. And then right after that, we're going to be jumping 2 feet first into draft coverage. So stick around for all that too. I'll see you all next week. And until then, later.